Hello fellow citizens, so Metaverse is George from Blockchain TXV and today is the 25th of November 2022 and we are just few days away from the last few days of November. And look guys, November has been a terrible month for the global cryptocurrency platform and this has had a negative impact on the cryptocurrency and blockchain platforms that are connected to Metaverse. And it all boils down to Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, and earlier in the year, even Terra Luna collapse definitely did not help the global cryptocurrency market. Now in today's Metaverse Everything podcast, we are going to be focusing on Metaverse related things. And one thing which I did discuss at the beginning of this year was about the United States of America and if they will be having a competitive advantage in the Metaverse. What happened earlier in the year, they did try to have the Chips and Science Act, and in today's episode, I'm going to be discussing how that most likely could give United States of America a competitive edge in the Metaverse, and this would be because of semiconductors and nanochips, and there's a lot of heavy investments taking place in those areas. And in my podcast, I've often mentioned about Qualcomm, and they've had partnership with Meta and quite a lot of other companies. Now these semiconductors and nanochips will be helping in building virtual reality headsets, augmented reality headsets, and mixed reality headsets, and quite a lot more. So we'll be exploring how the Chip and Science Act could potentially give US competitive advantage in the Metaverse. In today's episode, I'm also very briefly going to be discussing the timeline for mainstream adoption of Metaverse. So we'll be looking at it 3 to 5 years down the line, a decade from now, and a couple of decades from now. And one question which I often tend to ask my interviewees is, in the next few decades, will the Metaverse economy be bigger or larger than the real world economy? Now, while that thing is in play, are there going to be factors that will delay or fasten adoption? Now look guys, I have not made up my mind yet. Now what are your thoughts? Will geopolitical tension and situation between Russia and Ukraine, China and Taiwan, and internal conflict, will that have an impact on Metaverse adoption, or will it delay the adoption? And also things like inflation, stagflation, or recession. What are your thoughts? Mention them in the comments below. And like we do in every Metaverse Everything podcast, we're also going to be looking at the top 5 Metaverse news from around the world and top 5 Metaverse news from UAE. Now listen guys, on the episode on the 23rd of November, I did talk about a poll that is currently going on by Oxford University, and the poll wants to decide if Metaverse is the word of the year in 2022. Now look guys, if you're working in the Metaverse industry, you definitely need to go to Oxford University Press Twitter account and select Metaverse, because currently it is still lagging behind Goblin Mode, and we still have 4 more days to see if Metaverse is the year of the word in 2022. Now let's kickstart today's episode. Welcome everyone, it's A-Team here in Dubai and you're listening to Metaverse Everything, where we solely focus on Metaverse. We cover top 5 Metaverse news from around the world and top 5 Metaverse news from Dubai and UAE. And Metaverse Everything is a research-driven podcast focusing on educational and informational content about Metaverse and its impact. And listen guys, Monday to Thursdays, we also have Crypto and Coffee at 8 podcast, where we cover top news and information pertaining to Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And how the series of episodes on Crypto and Coffee at 8 works is, we usually cover some top news and information pertaining to the price of cryptocurrencies, some major breaking news, occasionally short and sweet news as well, news that has an impact in the cryptocurrency world. The other 2 news and information is related to Dubai, UAE, and Middle East in the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And Monday to Thursdays, I also have an Ask Me Anything series where you listeners can ask any questions from the cryptocurrency world. Now let's kickstart today's episode by looking at the price of the cryptocurrency and blockchain protocols that are connected to Metaverse. Now if you look at the market cap, it has marginally gone up since the last 7 days. Now last week, the market cap was roughly around $8.9 billion. It was on the verge of touching $9 billion, but this week today, 25th of November at 4 p.m. Gulf Standard Time, the market cap has marginally crossed the $9 billion mark. Now look guys, earlier in the year, the market cap of cryptocurrency and blockchain protocols that were connected to Metaverse was well over the $14 billion mark. But thanks to the Terra Luna collapse, thanks to Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, the market cap of cryptocurrency and blockchain platforms that are connected to Metaverse is well below the $10 billion mark. and it is at $9.06 billion. Now, since the last 24 hours, it is marginally up by 0.18%. If you look at the 24-hour trading volume, it is at $1.2 billion. Since the last 24 hours, though, it is down by minus 9.66%. Now, if you listened to my podcast last week, the 24-hour trading volume did go below the $1 billion mark. And to be honest, it might have been the very first time that I did see the 24-hour trading volume of cryptocurrency and blockchain platforms that are connected to Metaverse was below the $1 billion mark. And this was because of three news that took over the cryptocurrency world. That was the FTX drama, the inflation numbers, and the midterm elections. But the 24-hour trading volume has gone well over the $1 billion mark. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just quickly going to run through the price of the top 5 platforms, not in a specific order. ApeCoin is currently at $3.24. Since the last 24 hours, it is marginally down by 3.64%. Since the last 7 days, it is up by 10.39%. Now listen to the next two, guys. It's extremely scary. Decentraland or Mana is down to 39 cents. Since the last 24 hours, it is down by 1%. Since the last 7 days, it is down by 6.99%. And look, guys, 2 weeks ago, Decentraland did hold Ozfest in its platform. And to be honest, I have to say the experience was extremely disappointing. And this is one of the drawbacks with distributed or Web3 kind of blockchain protocols, because the decision making is done by the community. Often it is extremely slow and the user experience is just not better than centralized protocol. Now, I'm no way advocate of a centralized protocol, but the facts are that the distributed and decentralized metaverse has a long way to go. The sandbox or sand is down to 56 cents. Since the last 24 hours, it is marginally up by 0.18%. Since the last 7 days, it is down by 4.35%. Now, regarding sandbox or sand, I do have some news, and this is to do with 14 celebrities trying to buy some land. Unfortunately, looks like the news has not made any impact on the price of sand. The fourth one is Axie Infinity or AXS. It is at $6.65. Since the last 24 hours, it is down by 0.64%. Since the last 7 days, it is down by 7.91%. Tata Network, which had a relatively good last 3 months, is also below the $1 mark, and it is currently at 92 cents. Since the last 24 hours, it is up by 4.21%, and since the last 7 days, it is up by 0.81%. It's going to be really interesting, guys, in the next 2 to 5 years to see which protocol does withstand time, and I'm pretty much sure that there'll be newer blockchain protocols that are catered to Metaverse, having a 10x better user experience that most likely will be dominating the cryptocurrency and blockchain platforms that are connected to Metaverse. Now let's kickstart today's episode by discussing the Chips and Science Act. Now look, guys, when you talk about Metaverse at a macro level, semiconductors and nanochips will play an extremely pivotal role in giving an industry, a country, an advantage over its competitors. And United States of America earlier in the year did recognize the importance of semiconductors and nanochips. So in this particular podcast, I'm only going to be talking about points that are connected to Metaverse, because semiconductors and nanochips are connected to other industries as well. Now, the Chips and Science Act marks a significant bipartisan commitment to domestic manufacturing, regional innovation, and strong supply chain in the United States of America. And the US Senator Maria Cantwell, who's a Democrat, regarding the Chips and Science Act said, fully funded, it will foster an inclusive and highly skilled 21st century workforce, expand scientific research and development across the nation, and unleash American innovation in emerging technologies. Now, if you are an American company trying to build things on Metaverse, particularly the hardware side, that is a virtual reality headset or augmented reality headset, or anything to do with mixed reality headsets, this might just give you a competitive advantage, because building this thing within the National Geographical region will give you an advantage so far as supply chain management is concerned. And because of COVID, we did see how supply chain management did completely devastate the entire world economy. Now, so far as United States of America is concerned, it will strengthen American manufacturing, supply chain, and national security, and they're going to be investing in research and development, science and technology, and the workforce of the future to keep the United States the leader in the industries of tomorrow, including nanotechnology, clean energy, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence. So what are your thoughts, guys? Will the CHIPS and Science Act give United States of America a competitive advantage in the metaverse industry? Personally, I do think so. You also need to keep in mind there is a massive war going on between China and Taiwan so far as the semiconductor is concerned. Now, going back to the CHIPS and Science Act, Micron has announced that it is investing $40 billion. Now, what's going to happen with that $40 billion is it's going to increase United States of America's capacity so far as semiconductor and nanochips is concerned from 2% to 10% over the next decade. So once again, guys, if you're building things on hardware so far as virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality headset is concerned, you need to get connected with these companies. And Qualcomm has also partnered with Global Foundries, and they are investing $4.2 billion. And Qualcomm also had partnership with Meta. Now, Meta does want to release a virtual reality headset 3 to 5 years down the line at the price tag of $99. And Qualcomm, the leading fabless semiconductor company in the world, announced plans to increase semiconductor production in the US by up to 50% over the next 5 years. And this perfectly aligns with the time period of mainstream adoption of Metaverse. And look, guys, if you're in the fintech space, earlier in the year there were quite a lot of reports that semiconductors and nanochips is the new data and is the new oil, and whichever country is taking the lead will be dominating the next decade. So the big question, guys, is will the US have a competitive edge in the metaverse? You also need to remember, guys, is the world modernizing or is it Americanizing? And the CHIPS and Science Act will soon boost American semiconductor research, development, and production, ensuring US leadership is in the technology. And the CHIPS and Science Act provides $52.7 billion for American semiconductor research, development, manufacturing, and workforce development. Now, out of that $52.7 billion, $39 billion will be spent in manufacturing incentives, including $2 billion for the legacy chips used in automobiles and defense systems, $13.2 billion in research and development and workforce development, and roughly $500 billion to provide for international information communication technology, security, and semiconductor supply chain activities. Now, when you talk about Meta, and lately people have been celebrating Meta's downfall, you also need to keep all these things in mind on why Meta is heavily focusing on Metaverse. Now, all this data, guys, regarding the CHIPS and Science Act is directly taken from the White House website. And as per the White House website article, it states that these funds also come with strong guardrails, ensuring that recipients do not build certain facilities in China and other countries of concern, which means the focus is on making United States of America and having a competitive edge in the metaverse. But what are your thoughts? At this point of time, I really am not sure what other countries are doing in order to be an early adopter and having a competitive edge in the metaverse. So what are your thoughts, guys? Do you agree to it? Or do you think will it be China or any other country that will be leading the metaverse race? Mention your thoughts in the comment section below. Now let's look at the timeline for mainstream adoption of metaverse. Now look, guys, I mentioned the same timeline for other protocols as well. Things like virtual reality headset, augmented reality headset, mixed reality headset, and quite a lot more. Now I'm going to be sharing my thoughts and opinions. You might agree to it, you might disagree to it. Mention your concerns or thoughts in the comment sections below. Now what I do feel 3 to 5 years down the line, we're going to be seeing a lot of innovation. And reading by LinkedIn profile posts, I'm seeing a lot of innovation which do not necessarily belong in metaverse, but it just states that people have a lot of interest in the hype of metaverse. I do feel 3 to 5 years down the line, there's going to be a lot of focus on virtual reality headsets, not necessarily on augmented reality headsets. There are so many events, particularly in Dubai and UAE, that is focusing solely on metaverse. And we also have some update in Dubai regarding the Dubai metaverse strategy. So when I'll be covering the top 5 metaverse news from Dubai and UAE, I'm also going to be sharing some update regarding the Dubai metaverse strategy. Now there's a lot of mainstream coverage which I do envision in the next 3 to 5 years in the metaverse, and I do feel that there will be newer industry newer sectors that will be created and that probably most likely exist in the metaverse. Now, I do feel that would happen in the next 3 to 5 years. 5 to 8 years down the line is where I do feel we will be in the transitioning stage. And I do feel that new generation will dictate the future of metaverse. Unfortunately, I don't think it will be the millennials who will be deciding the future of metaverse. It would be the Generation Z that might decide the future of metaverse. And 5 to 8 years down the line, I do feel that we might see a rise in augmented reality headset and different use cases where augmented reality does become part of our day-to-day lives. Now, you also need to remember the economies of scale. Now, if you're an early adopter in the augmented reality space now, it could be possible that 5 to 8 years down the line, you could have a competitive advantage. Now, I do feel 5 to 8 years down the line, there might be economies that only exist in the metaverse, not connected to the physical world at all. And 5 to 8 years down the line, I do feel that metaverse will be a serious threat to mobile and cell phones. What are your thoughts, guys? Mention them in the comments below. Now listen, guys, while I was trying to research for my podcast, I was also trying to think how often at our homes do we have the desktop computer. I really am not sure if that does exist at home. Right now, everyone has a laptop. Some of them, they don't even laptop, you just use smartphones. Could it be possible that 5 to 8 years down the line, mobile phones will be replaced by virtual reality headset or augmented reality headsets? In my podcast last week, I did talk about 5 to 8 years down the line, the virtual reality headset will be focusing on long-term duration and for a longer user experience. Now, there will be a lot of emphasis on haptic devices as well. And there is a company in Dubai called as Tesla Suits. They are already having a full-body haptic device for virtual reality headsets. But I still think we are early in the space, because if you actually put the haptic devices, it does feel a little bit uncomfortable. But you need to remember these haptic devices needs to focus on longer duration, and I'm talking about a couple of hours easily. That trend we might see 5 to 8 years down the line. Could we see it sooner? That'll be great if it happens, but I do think 5 to 8 years down the line, that would be the main talk. And all of the events, 5 to 8 years from now, we might see events taking place in Dubai and other parts of the world, focusing on haptic devices, focusing on augmented reality and new use cases. A decade from now, I do feel that the mainstream adoption of metaverse will become a reality. But at that point of time, we just might have to reassess the industry. Because look, guys, a couple of decades ago, we were under the impression that we would be having flying cars. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that yet. And I'm trying to recollect a movie with Sylvester Stallone, I think it is called as Demolition Man, which talked about how the world by the year 2000 will be so advanced, we're going to be having everything electronic. Unfortunately, things have gone backwards to a lot of extent. Now, at that point of time, probably a decade from now, we might also be having potential threats and new learnings. There might be new industries that just might delay the mainstream adoption of metaverse. In the next section, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts and opinions on what could possibly have potential threats for mainstream adoption of metaverse. There could be a possibility of new threats from newer industries which are not connected to metaverse, which might digress interest from metaverse. And in my last week's podcast, I did talk about space exploration, and I also talked about newer technology that would digress interest from metaverse. It could be possible that there are newer and better technologies that might replace interest in the metaverse. But look, guys, few decades from now, I do feel that the economies in metaverse will be in par with real world economies. It might be a bit too futuristic, but what are your thoughts? Do you agree to it or disagree to it? Mention them in the comments below. Now, probably 10 years from now, probably a decade from now, we might get a direction as to where the world economy is leading. And maybe 2 or 3 decades from now, could it be possible that the metaverse economy is bigger than the real world economy? By that time, you also need to remember, will the metaverse be a distributed or decentralized form of metaverse, or is it going to be a centralized metaverse? Things like Meta, Facebook, or Microsoft, will they be the ones who will be dominating the market? It's yet to be seen. So what are your thoughts, guys? Mention them in the comments below. So probably in the next decade's time or so, it's really important to revisit everything, and that might give us an idea of where the industry is heading. But one thing to note is that the demographic analysis is so critical a decade or 2 decades from now, because the dimensions and the dynamics of populations will have a massive impact on the future, on the trajectory of Metaverse. And currently, the woke mentality is definitely making a lot of chaos in the regular world economy. Imagine having a woke mentality in the Metaverse, and some things that you say could be offensive, some things that you create could be offensive. I think that could definitely delay or derail the entire Metaverse as well. And guys, listen, in the next few years, is it possible that we might be having a new world leader? Could it be possible that China is the new world leader? And what kind of an impact will that have to Metaverse? Now, these are things at a macro level, but it would eventually have impact at a micro level as well. So working environments will completely be shattered, and we might be working in the Metaverse. And in my podcast a few weeks ago, I did talk about Meta having some really strong partnership with Accenture and Microsoft 365, and they're already working on creating a Metaverse solely focusing on the working environment, and education, healthcare, and travel industries could be severely affected, both in a positive way as well as in a negative way because of Metaverse. And in today's episode, I'm also going to be sharing one really unique experience of Metaverse, and this is to do with Saudi Arabia, and it has got to do with the tomb. Now, there are two ways of looking at it, that Metaverse could actually make it a completely unique experience, and you don't necessarily have to travel to visit these iconic locations. But at the same time, what happens if these data or information is manipulated? So there are definitely positives and negatives of Metaverse as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the next few years, in the next couple of decades, and few decades from now to get mainstream adoption of Metaverse. But listen guys, I do feel that there are certain factors that could delay or fasten adoption of Metaverse. Now, to be honest, I have a mixed reaction to this, because when I interview people, CEOs and startups from around the world, I'm getting a mixture of answers. So I kind of agree to them, so I haven't made up my mind. But what are your thoughts, guys? Will geopolitical situation, inflation, deflation, and stagflation, will it delay the mainstream adoption of Metaverse, or will it fasten mainstream adoption of Metaverse? If you look at the geopolitical situation between Russia and the Ukraine, I'm hoping it does not turn out into a nuclear war. China and Taiwan, chaos is also building up. How will that impact the adoption of Metaverse? The investment that goes into wars and protecting your territory. What happens if that same investment would have gone into Metaverse? Could it have increased the adoption of Metaverse? Or, because there is war and chaos going on, is it possible that newer things are innovated, and because of that we could actually see an increase in Metaverse adoption? What are your thoughts? Mention them in the comments below. There's also internal conflict which is going on, particularly in US, even UK, in Brazil, Sri Lanka, Canada, everywhere in the world. Now, all these internal conflict, how does it impact investment so far as Metaverse is concerned? What are your thoughts? Mention them in the comments below. Now, right now, what you're facing is inflation, and there is a very high chance that we might have an economic collapse, especially so far as cryptocurrency is concerned. You did notice what happened to Terra Luna, you did notice what happened to FTX, and I'm just hoping that something terrible does not happen to Tether USDT or any other protocol. If that thing happens, there will be further downfall in cryptocurrencies, and most of the Metaverse platforms are somehow, some way connected to cryptocurrencies, either in the form of investments or in the form of the underlying protocol. So, will inflation, deflation, and stagflation impact the global adoption of Metaverse in a positive way, or will it delay the adoption of Metaverse? What are your thoughts, guys? And mention them in the comments below. Now, another thing, guys, what you also need to remember when you talk about the hype of Metaverse, what countries are in favor of Metaverse? Is it that the developed countries that are in favor of Metaverse, or are underdeveloped countries in favor of Metaverse, or is it developing countries in favor of Metaverse? And to be honest, guys, the answer is surprising. Developing countries have a keen interest on Metaverse, and developed countries do not see Metaverse as a new thing. They are constantly ignoring it. Now, will that also have an impact on mainstream adoption of Metaverse? So let's say if United States of America and the G8 countries are not too keen on Metaverse and are focusing on other technologies at a macro level, will that have an impact on Metaverse? What are your thoughts, guys? Mention them in the comments below. Now, guys, those are my thoughts and opinion. Now let's look at the top 5 Metaverse news from around the world. And the first news is about an article written by Deloitte. And Deloitte's Metaverse study estimates that the Metaverse could add $1.4 trillion to Asia's GDP annually by 2035. They have noted that the Metaverse market could be as large as $13 trillion by 2030. And the global finance services firm said the Metaverse is no longer science fiction. Early Metaverse platforms are already being used by millions. But once again, guys, this focuses on Asia region, not necessarily developed countries. Now in Asia, there are certain countries that are developed, but most of the countries are still in the development stage. Now, so far as the study is concerned, the study takes an in-depth look at 12 Asian countries, that is Hong Kong, India, Indonesia, Japan, mainland China, Pakistan, Philippines, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, and Vietnam. Out of these 12 countries, you also need to understand what view developed countries have and what views developing countries have. Now that I do feel has a massive impact on the future and the trajectory of Metaverse. The second news, guys, is all the way from South Africa. And South Africa retail giant called Game has announced its Metaverse debut through a game-branded Roblox game, and it launched on 21st of November. Now what that game does is, it gives players the opportunity to win their share of over Rand 70,000 in vouchers leading up to Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So definitely brilliant stuff. Now the third news is all the way from Saudi Arabia. Now apart from smashing Argentina 2-1 in the FIFA World Cup, they're also getting heavily involved in the Metaverse. And in my Metaverse Everything podcast 2 weeks ago, I also talked about philanthropy cases being used in Metaverse, but this news is about Hagar's tomb in the Metaverse. So Hagar's tomb of Lian in Al-Ula is recreated in the Metaverse, and virtual tourists can enter the prominent Hagar tomb, which visitors in the real world can't do. And the UNESCO World Heritage Site has been recreated digitally with a 3D model and rendered in Decentraland, an Ethereum-powered virtual platform. So it makes the first venture of Al-Ula in the Metaverse, as well as the first time a UNESCO landmark has been rendered in the digital world. And look, guys, if such protocols are created in Metaverse, it would drive some interest away from physically going into that place, because with virtual reality headset and with augmented reality headset, you might be able to do quite a lot more, which you will not be able to do in a physical world. You also need to take into consideration the travel time. Now, I'm not sure how long it takes in terms of, visiting the Hagar tomb. Let's say it just takes 45 minutes to 1 hour, but if the travel time is 6 to 8 hours, you just might be demotivated to physically go out and visit that place. Rather, you will just do it in the Metaverse. Now, the fourth news, guys, is a partnership, and this is between Air Miles and Tokens.com. So the news is Air Miles has partnered with Tokens.com and Metaverse Group to become first branded agnostic loyalty program of the Metaverse, and this new partnership model will open the door for Air Miles to create innovative new channels for partner brands to connect with consumers while extending the scale of the program in the digital world. So definitely brilliant stuff. Now the fifth news, guys, is by Sandbox, and I did talk about it at the beginning of the episode, and I wanted to check if they would have any impact on the price of sand, but unfortunately there is no impact on the price of sand. So the news is Sandbox, whose native token is Sand, has announced the launch of new land sales in NFT Metaverse with new themed virtual districts and in collaboration with 14 global brands. Now listen to this, guys. The prestigious brands involved includes the likes of Paris Hilton, Time, Tony Hawk, Lear Facial, Cut the Rope, Face Clan, which allow buyers to throw Playboy Meta Mansion parties and create different experiences near Soprani or immerse themselves in Snoop Dogg's musical universe. I was hoping that because of this news, the price would pump at least 10 to 15%, but unfortunately, it has not had any impact on the price of Sandbox. So it's going to be really crucial to see what happens to the price of sand. Next, guys, let's talk about the top 5 Metaverse news from Dubai and UAE. Earlier this year, guys, Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Crown Prince of Dubai and the Chairman of Dubai Executive Council and Chairman of Dubai's Higher Committee of Future Technology Development and Digital Economy, did release the Dubai Metaverse Strategy. And I do have an entire episode dedicated only on Dubai Metaverse Strategy. Now, there is an announcement that they have a new phase of the Dubai Metaverse strategy, and it was approved at the first meeting of the Higher Committee of Future Technology Development and Digital Economy. At this point of time, there's no information out. If you want to get more information, just read through his tweet, because in that tweet he did say that he chaired the first meeting of the Higher Committee of Future Technology Development and Digital Economy. Other than that, there's no information as what the new phase is. Based on the official Dubai Media Office website, it states that he approved 4 key strategies aimed at using Metaverse technology to provide government services, and a comprehensive study aimed at identifying the social benefits of introducing Metaverse services that will be submitted to the Executive Council for approval. So what I'm going to be doing is, maybe in the next couple of weeks or so, I will release a follow-up episode explaining the update in the new phase of Dubai Metaverse strategy. Now guys, the next news is about an MBRF conference, and the MBRF has decided to organize the Youth Knowledge Forum in December, and this is done under the patronage of Latifa bin Mohammed, and the Youth Forum will also invite decision makers to discuss the massive opportunities in the Metaverse. And look guys, a lot of the government entities in Dubai and UAE are definitely making the headway in Metaverse. So Metaverse in UAE is definitely one of the key agendas. Now let's talk about a third news, and this is also to do with the government sector, but all the way from Sharjah, and it is by Sharjah Tourism, called as SITTF. So SITTF was an event, and it was the 9th edition of Sharjah International Tourism and Tourism Forum, and at that event they said Metaverse is to complement tourism and hospitality industries, and it ended on a high note with tourism experts sharing the excitement of post-pandemic travelers, and Cliff Zhu, who's the CEO of Multiverse, shed light into his experience of building the digital twin of Sharjah city on the Metaverse, and what he said was that Sharjahverse was created in collaboration with the Sharjah Commerce and Tourism Authority, and they used geospatial data from satellite images to create a 3D explorable environment for the interiors. They captured images using special video cameras and combined them using algorithm and artificial intelligence, and this digital twin city was created to bridge the journey between the physical and digital worlds, and creating such experience have shown to increase employee productivity and a new way to connect to customers. So Sharjah Tourism is definitely getting into Metaverse. Now the fourth news, guys, is by Sygnum Bank, and the news is Sygnum is the world's first digital asset bank and the first Swiss bank to open a hub in the Metaverse, and they're leveraging its oversubscribed $90 million Series B to expand internationally into Abu Dhabi's high-growth crypto hub. So it looks like Abu Dhabi and companies in Abu Dhabi are also making the news in the Metaverse. Now the fifth news, guys, is to do with a training session. If you're trying to build your knowledge on Metaverse, there was an event focusing on communication in the Metaverse, and the PR Academy MENA held the region's first communication in the Metaverse Masterclass, and there were 2 training sessions on the 21st and the 22nd of November, and they were moderated by international public relations futurist Stuart Bruce. Now listen guys, follow me on LinkedIn. I'll give you a link which actually shows what the module contains. Now I cannot read it out because there's quite a lot of information, but this event was in collaboration with Dubai Media Incorporated, one of the largest media organizations in the Middle East and UAE, and the PR Academy MENA is the first academic institute in the Middle East to offer the masterclass training workshop called as Communication in the Metaverse, and it did actually take place a few days ago between the 21st and the 22nd. And the Communication in the Metaverse Masterclass is one of the many things being offered by the PR Academy MENA that students can enroll absolutely at any time. If you do want to find out more information, the website is www.tpra.me. That is T for Tango, P for Peter, R for Roger, A for Alpha.me. That's M for Mother, E for Elephant. So those were the top 5 Metaverse news from Dubai and UAE. And that's all for today, guys, on the Metaverse Everything podcast from Blockchain DXB. In case if you have any feedback or suggestions, please drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com, and also check out my website area2071.com that talks everything about Metaverse, and also check out my other website that is blockchaindxb.com, where you get all information regarding Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi and Metaverse. And if you like listening to this podcast, please click on the follow button, give it a 5-star rating, and share the word across. And remember guys, Monday to Thursdays, 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. we have Crypto and Coffee at 8, where we cover top news and information pertaining to Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And how the series of episodes in the Crypto and Coffee at 8 works is, we usually cover some top news and information pertaining to the price of cryptocurrencies, some major breaking news, occasionally short and sweet news as well, news that has an impact in the cryptocurrency world. The other two news and information is related to Dubai, UAE and Middle East, and the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. And Monday to Thursdays, guys, I also have an Ask Me Anything series where you listeners can ask any questions from the cryptocurrency world. And every Fridays that you're listening to right now is the Metaverse Everything podcast, where we solely focus on Metaverse. So if you do have any feedback or suggestions, mention them in the comments below. The Metaverse Everything podcast is a research-driven podcast focusing on educational and informational content about Metaverse and its impact. So if you do have any feedback or suggestions, mention them in the comments below or drop me an email to info@blockchaintxp.com. Thanks so much for listening, guys, and have a brilliant weekend ahead. Bye-bye.